The 4.7 Archon Quest bedtime story name-dropped what might just be the real villains of Genshin Impact. We are more than halfway done with Genshin's story already. Think about it, we're closer to Khaenri'ah's potential release than we are to Mondstadt's release back in 2020. The story's really starting to ramp up even more, especially with the reveal of the 5 Sinners of Khaenri'ah. The 5 Sinners and Dainsleif were supposed to be the heroes of Khaenri'ah, and each of them were the best at their specific crafts. Just to give you an idea, one of them mastered the art of creating artificial life, and this particular sinner is largely blamed for unleashing her unholy creations on Teyvat, causing massive damage to the far corners of the world during the Cataclysm. So, if all of them are of equivalent power scaling and knowledge, then we're cooked. At present day, according to Skirk, some of them are pursuing some form of perfection. In the bedtime story Archon Quest, Dainsleif said that he and the 5 were supposed to be the ones to prevent disaster, the ones to stop the Vinster King from continuing to rock the foundation of this world. What does that mean though? Rocking the foundations of this world could mean messing with the laws of Teyvat, but the last time this phrase was used was during a relatively hidden side quest in Fontaine. In Pursuit Part 2, you speak to the conscience of Carter Sherbius, who appears to you in the form of a mechanical dog and tells you this world was going to disintegrate because someone who shouldn't be here arrived, shaking the foundations of this world. If you defeat his reborn Hilichurl form, he tells you that's good. You just got rid of someone who shouldn't be here. And thanks to you, this world's collapse has stopped. We know from Perrin-Harry and Arlecchino's backstory that long ago, Khaenri'ah was not only obsessed with creating life, but also summoning outlanders or aliens to their world in hopes that one of them would be a descender, an all-powerful being whose will is said to rival that of Teyvat's. Perhaps the supposed Vinster King's obsession with bringing Outlanders and Descender to this world is the source of a lot of problems Teyvat and Khaenri'ah have been dealing with. Perhaps that and creating new life is something that they're not supposed to do, and thus doing so causes the foundations of this world to shake. A popular guess for the identity of this Vinster King is King Irmin of Khaenri'ah. The statue at Mob Drop seemed to refer to King Irmin, and you can see how it gets more and more corrupted with each stage. A detail that works towards this theory is the fact that King Irmin was suspiciously indisposed or too unfit to rule right before the Cataclysm, and Kaya's ancestors, the Alberic clan, had to step up as regents for the nation. This sets an interesting precedent. If the Vinster King was King Irmin who lost his mind to the call of the Abyss, then the 5 sinners were probably tasked with defeating their king, and this election may have even happened in secret. I mean, if you had to backstab your evil king, then obviously you wouldn't tell him, right? Instead, 5 of the 6 elected members were also seduced by the Abyss, and instead divided among themselves a power that could destroy the world. In doing so, they became transcendent beings, each in possession of world-shattering power. Yeah, we're totally cooked. Dainsleif claims that none of the sinners stood up to protect Khaenri'ah during the Cataclysm, and for that, he seeks vengeance on all of them, even if they might be his family. Dainsleif plus the 5 sinners equals 6, and this reminds me of my favorite book in the entire series, The Pale Princess and the 6 Pygmies. It's actually one of the first books you encounter in the beginning of the game, thanks to Lisa's story quest. An Abyss Mage alleges that this book has a secret important to the Abyss Order. And we can also assume this book is related to Khaenri'ah since many, but not all, Khaenri'ahns ended up in the Abyss Order. The Order was legit founded by a Khaenri'ahn. Only Volume 1 out of 7 is officially in the game, unfortunately, but what's interesting is the descriptions of Volumes 5 and 6. The 6 Pygmies' sinister scheme starts to unfold, and how the 6 Pygmies managed to implement their nefarious plot is definitely reminiscent of how the 5 sinners divided among themselves a power that could destroy the world. Keep in mind that this book is so important that Lisa makes us the permanent custodian of this book in an attempt to keep its contents safe from the Abyss Order's reach. But before we dive too deep into theories about the 5 sinners, we need to first cover what we know about each member. In today's video, we're going to go through the lore of each of the 5 sinners, and I'll explain everything we know about them so far in the current lore, as well as some speculations as to who some of them might be. I'm your Leafy Lore Shira Minsleif, and I read the Genshin Impact lore so that you don't have to. Did you know Klee's mother Alice has been trying to make a Genshin girl group? She tried recruiting Barbara and Ayaka into her Teyvat Idols group. Just cause Alice's idol group isn't working out too well doesn't mean yours can't. If you've always wanted to be the next pop idol, well, today's your lucky day. This video is sponsored by Ensemble Stars Music, a Japanese gacha-based rhythm game where you can train to be the next pop idol sensation right from your mobile device. Ensemble Stars Music is celebrating its 2nd anniversary, which features a new event banner, Amazing Voyage, where you can get Wataru Hibiki. The new feature dynamic card will be available for the featured cards in the Scout. Log in every day during the celebration to get 10 free pulls with a guaranteed 5-star, along with another free 10 Scout, diamonds, and more, like a free daily single pull. You'll also have access to Revival Scouts, which means you can pull for scouts that were previously in the game. Producer Induction and the 2nd Anniversary Amazing Show are brand new modes for you to get more freebies like another free 10 pull. The MV Outfits Try-On is also a new fun mode for you to see idols in your favorite outfits performing a music video. Download Ensemble Stars Music for free using the link in the description below and the pinned comment to participate in the 2nd Anniversary Celebration event, which starts on June 16th. Thank you so much Ensemble Stars Music for sponsoring today's video. Now on to the video. There will be some speculations regarding this topic since there are 2 members in this quintet that we know actually nothing about. The 5 sinners might be the sages mentioned in the Pale Flame artifact set. Just in case you didn't know, every piece of the Pale Flame set has lore about some of the Fatui Harbingers. Stainless Bloom is about La Señora, bless her soul. Doctor's Pinion, Il Dottore, Moment of Cessation, Pantalone, Surpassing Cup, Scaramouche, and the Mocking Mask is about Piero. Piero was once a mage in Conria who failed to gain favor with the ruler at that time, likely King Irmin. Due to being less capable than the country's sages, he could not stop them from doing something that tore away the veil of sin, an act which would later bring destruction to Conria. This probably implies that Piero is not one of the 5 sinners since these sages outclassed him and the sinners were the best at their crafts. One hint that might support this theory of the 5 sinners being these sages is found in the names of one of them. Hrolftathir the Wise is the first of the 5 sinners that we'll cover, and Hrolftathir is one of the names of the Norse god Odin. It translates to sage in the collection of Norse poems, the Poetic Edda. There's something interesting to note here though. Let's go back to the Mocking Mask artifact for a sec. In the English translation, it says this: "Since my level of learning could not compare with the sages, I failed to earn the favor of the previous ruler." However, according to Wind Valley Quark, in the Chinese translation, sages is not plural. Instead, it seems to indicate that there aren't multiple sages, but only one. The sage thinks themselves to be all-knowing, gender neutral, and since my level of learning could not compare with the sage. With Hrolftathir meaning sage and the name being one of the many names for Odin in Norse mythology, and with Irmin's many parallels to Odin as well, it's possible Hrolftathir is the sage that works the closest to King Irmin. With a name like that, Hrolftathir could even possibly be the leader of the 5 sinners. There's another sinner who has some pretty close ties with Odin as well, and that is Reyrir, Reykja of Solnari. Reyrir is also the sinner we know the least about. In Norse mythology, Reyrir is Odin's grandson who seeks to avenge the death of his murdered father, Sigi. In fact, Reyrir's bloodline is full of stories that involve avenging someone's death. Just as Reyrir avenges his father Sigi's death, his own son Volsung ends up avenging his death in the future. This whole theme of avenging has very much inspired his title as the Reykja of Solnari, since the word Reykja in German means avenger. So his title means Avenger of Solnari. The etymology of Solnari is ambiguous, and as far as we know, it's the first time it's been mentioned. The Chinese translation of Reyrir's title is the one who hunts the moon. The implications of this are wild. The prophecy from Daneslif's character introduction states that Chalk pursues gold, a reference to Albedo and his master Reindotir, and then it says, in this time inopportune, the eclipse is swallowed by the crimson moon. Conria had 2 ruling dynasties that we know of so far, the Crimson Moon Dynasty and the most recent one, the Eclipse Dynasty. This prophecy implies that the Eclipse Dynasty, or what's left of it, might be completely overtaken by the Crimson Moon. Or maybe this already happened? So either Reyrir is hunting survivors of the Crimson Moon Dynasty, or he's hunting gods. The most notable moon gods are the 3 moon goddesses. I have a video which goes more in depth with their story and possible identities because it's a lot to cover, but basically, if you don't have the time to watch that, the 3 moon goddesses might have been the goddesses that ruled over the Seelie race. You know, before they turned into the little wispy forms we see today. The moon goddesses are currently missing, and all we know is that at least one of them is already dead. Speaking of someone Dainsleif probably wants dead, on to the next sinner, Vedrfolnir the Visionary. Now this one's gonna be a fun one because Dainsleif just randomly drops that Vedrfolnir is his older brother, kind of out of nowhere. Apparently I have a brother-in-law. When Dainsleif was announced playable during a Bilibili livestream on September 27, 2020, his character introduction came with a prophecy. A self-proclaimed prophet tells him, "Dain, what is that strand of blonde hair to you? Someone you must kill, or the object of your penitence?" Judging by a strand of blonde hair and someone you must kill, this prophecy probably indicates his motive for vengeance against the 5 sinners, including his older brother. The Chinese translation of Dainsleif's prophecy is more accurately translated as the elder one and the younger one of the same blood will fight each other. This prophecy probably predicts Dainsleif's and Vedrfolnir's rivalry, as well as the travelers' possible future battle with their own sibling, since Aether is canonically the older sibling. In fact, this prophecy itself may have also come from Vedrfolnir. Vedrfolnir was revealed to be the sinner whose voice we heard from the crystal in the first Karabar Archon quest. His influence inspired Clothar Alberic to form the Abyss Order. But how did this happen? During the Karabar Archon quest, Traveler experienced a sibling's memory from 500 years ago. Clothar and the sibling followed Hilichurls into a mysterious sanctuary, and there they saw a purple crystal suspended by 6 chains. 6 chains for the 5 sinners and Dainsleif, with Hilichurls bowing towards it. Clothar is later seen praying to the crystal, and this pose is very reminiscent of the prayer pose in the artifact screen. According to a developer's Q&A in the Pash magazine, developers state that there needs to be a prayer ceremony in order to receive an artifact's blessing and protection. This pose also reminds Traveler of the dead thief in front of the upside-down statue back in the We Will Be Reunited Archon quest. Perhaps abyssal artifacts also require prayer to abyssal beings in order to activate their powers as well. After Clothar's prayer, the crystal or Vedrfolnir imbues him with abyssal power. With this power, he's able to restore Karabar's sentience and speech. In the same quest, Dainsleif mentions that he, meaning Vedrfolnir, saw Traveler experiencing their siblings' memories. Just think about that. As Traveler was experiencing their siblings' memories, Vedrfolnir saw Traveler through these memories, which means that he can give people abyssal power and he can traverse through memories. According to Dainsleif, whatever he said to our sibling may have encouraged them to join the Abyss Order as well. But what was he even saying?
You are like a flower, born in sin, yet pure, spotless. I know your fate well. You need no longer hold back your resentment, nor accept the countless lies. Go forth, become a transcendent one. Rise beyond the fate bestowed upon you. And I shall shed a tear at the end of time, as I gaze back upon your life.
Remember, the 5 sinners could not resist the call of the Abyss, and they divided among themselves a power that could destroy the world. With that power, they became transcendent beings. If I had to guess, becoming transcendent beings probably has something to do with becoming someone akin to a descender. We know our sibling is not a descender. They don't have the will to defy the rules of Teyvat. So in a sense, Vedrfolnir is calling our sibling to rise beyond the fate bestowed upon them. There's something interesting to note here. Vedrfolnir says he knows our sibling's fate well, the same fate that Nahida said was being obfuscated or made ambiguous in the Irminsul tree. This means Vedrfolnir has exclusive access to parts of the Irminsul tree that Nahida doesn't have, or he has access to information outside of the Irminsul tree. His connection to the Irminsul tree is probably inspired by his Norse mythology namesake. Vedrfolnir is a hawk that sits between the eyes of an unnamed eagle atop the Norse world tree Yggdrasil. His title is the Visionary, and according to Mona, a visionary is a powerful prophet who is able to read the fortune or essentially fate of the whole world. Only few visionaries are known to exist aside from Vedrfolnir. Mona's master Barbaloth and a few unnamed witches from the Hexencircle are the only ones we know of. It's heavily implied that Vedrfolnir is the one who divined the prophecy of Fontaine. Now, this doesn't mean that he caused everything in Fontaine to happen. No, it just means he saw that it was going to happen. According to the prophecy, all the inhabitants of Fontaine are born with sin that would later be punished by death, leaving only the Hydro Archon weeping on her throne. The only thing not shown in this prophecy is the appearance of the all-devouring narwhal, whose power caused the flood in Fontaine. Vedr Folnir predicted the prophecy of Fontaine, and Sirtologi's pet whale, the all-devouring narwhal, decided to interfere. The five sinners definitely were trying to accomplish something during the Fontaine Archon quests, but we don't know what it is yet. But who's Sirtologi, you may ask? Sirtologi the Foul is a sinner who was first mentioned at the end of the Fontaine Archon quests. He is Skirk's master, and Skirk is Child's master. Foul Legacy is the name of Child and Skirk's fighting style, and Skirk originally learned it from Sirtologi. Skirk actually says something really funny about him. She says her master is insufficiently famous when Neuvillette is unfamiliar with his name. He should be more famous, and apparently, he's not. He's irrelevant. Anyways, in Norse mythology, Surtur is the fearsome giant who rules over Muspelheim, the realm of fire and volcanoes. Oh please, I hope it means we get to meet him in that land. Muspelheim is located to Niflheim, the realm of ice, and its heat melted the icy plains on its borders, and the resulting body of water became a primordial pool of life. Which is so cool how it plays out in the Fontaine Archon quests. Sirtologi's whale was devouring the primordial sea, and the primordial sea is what the previous Hydro Archon Nigeria used to create oceanid human life forms. The name Sirtologi is Surtur's sword, and it was said to be so hot that it can set the entire world aflame. Surtur plays a massive role in Ragnarok, the end of the world. He and Dainsleif share a similarity in which both their names are based off legendary Norse weapons. Sirtologi's pet whale is the abyssal, all-devouring narwhal from the Fontaine Archon quests. When Child was 14 years old, he fell into the abyss and awakened the narwhal. This encounter would later inspire him to make the whale construct you see during his boss battle. It's likely that the narwhal followed Child back to Teyvat after waking up and started consuming energy from the primordial sea in Fontaine. In terms of power scaling, Sirtologi most likely has a transformation like Foul Legacy. As one of the five sinners, he's definitely the best at what he does, but we don't even know what he does yet without getting into too much theory territory. All we know is yes, he's strong, probably has a magical girl transformation, and he owns a pet whale. Where did Sirtologi even get an abyssal whale pet? Did someone create it for him? It's not confirmed that this particular person created the abyssal whale for Sirtologi, but I think it's time to segue to our final sinner. Reindatir, or Gold, is a sinner we have the most information on, and she is one of the most famous characters in the story so far. The art of Kemia is a form of alchemy that was developed and primarily used in Khaenri'ah. Khaenri'ah was an underground nation with little nature, so the art of Kemia focuses on the creation of life. Kemia, the creation of life, was considered the apex achievement of alchemy, and currently the only known person in Genshin to have successfully mastered the art of Kemia is Reindatir. Reindatir is notorious for her role in the Cataclysm. However, the details of her involvement in this great disaster are unclear, since Genshin actually gives us contradicting information. The most popular belief in the world is that Reindatir's creations traveled to Teyvat first, causing Celestia and the Archons to react, and this act led to Khaenri'ah's punishment and ultimate destruction. Contradictory to this account, the Chunk of Erosiderite claims that when Khaenri'ah was destroyed, a great sinner created endless monsters with dark alien blood flowing through their veins. This means Reindatir set her monstrous creations on Teyvat after Khaenri'ah was destroyed. So in one account, Reindatir started the Cataclysm, and in the other account, she had a reaction to Khaenri'ah's destruction. Let's go over some of her notable creations. Durin was an abyssal dragon who, during the Cataclysm, invaded Mondstadt and was slain by Dvalin and the Anemo Archon. His death was actually super sad. Durin was born with a gentle heart and dreamed of befriending the people of Mondstadt. According to the lore of the Dragonspine Spear, he was apparently unconscious during his destruction of Mondstadt. It almost seems like his perception of reality was completely altered, or he was mind-controlled, since he mistook his rampage as singing and dancing with Dvalin, Barbatos, and the people of Mondstadt. It says when he opened his eyes, he was surprised to find Dvalin's teeth piercing through his neck. Dvalin's bite would kill Durin, but even in death, Durin harbored no hatred towards anybody. Durin's body is the massive skeletal remains you can find in Dragonspine. you can still see his heart beating. Another creation who faced a similar fate to Durin is Elenas, whose body you can find in Fontaine. The Ancient Colors world quest heavily implies that Elenas' creator and mother is Reindotir. It's through Elenas that we're able to get a rough idea of how Reindotir brings her creations to life. According to him, he was originally an unknown form who floated in the abyss. Mother would later give him life and a strong, healthy body. He had elder siblings who treated him well and many younger ones that came along, meaning Reindotir probably has many more creations during the Cataclysm that we're unaware of. Elenas also seemed to have a skewed sense of reality, or was at least exhibiting a similar kind of mind control that Durin experienced. After realizing that his existence brought destruction, Elenas actually wanted to die. He was chased by the Fontaine Armada and would later die when Basil Elton's ship, the Sponsian, lunged itself into his body. About 100 years later, Elenas' remains and consciousness play a major role in the Nazistenkreuz world quests. An explosion would occur inside his remains during a fight between Marianne, Seymour, and the Nazistenkreuz Ordo. The wounds and broken flesh from his body resulted in the Melusine being born. In the present, Jacob Ingold restarts Elenas' heart to revive him, but this process is stopped by Traveler. It was Elenas' wish to stay dead, since his body is now home to his beloved Melusine, but he does still dream of one day returning to life to explore the world without causing destruction. On to her next creation, the Rift Wolves. The Rift Wolves were rampant during the Cataclysm, and according to Raiden's Story Quest Act 2, they were often advanced guards of even bigger abyssal creatures. Some examples of these other abyssal creatures are the dark bats and the giant tortoise from the Fading Twilight Bow, and the tiger serpent creature from the Mask of the Kijin. Keep in mind that we don't have confirmation yet if these creatures I just mentioned were some of Durin and Elenas' many siblings who were planned, or if they were accidental creations like the Golden Wolf Lord. But you know who else was planned? Albedo, specifically Primordial Albedo. This is actually one of my gripes with Genshin actually. It's the fact that a lot of people don't have access to the older events because the lore in them was super juicy. Unless you've read a lot of lore sources, some of you probably don't know that Albedo has a twin brother. Presumably before the Cataclysm, Reindotir worked on what she called the Primordial Human Project, which was her attempt at creating humans through alchemy. Humans instead of her typical abyssal cuddlies. One such attempt was Primordial Albedo, which she deemed a failure and was fed to Durin. Ew. Although Durin and Elenas have fond memories of her, Albedo and Primordial Albedo don't. They knew her to be a cold, distant person. Durin's blood has some insane properties, by the way. Her creations are described as having toxic and corrosive blood imbued with the power of the abyss. This is just my theory, but this blood could be Alkahest, which is the ascension material for the Cinnabar Spindle, one of Albedo's best in slot weapons. Alkahest is described as a deadly corrosive alien poison with the ability to change matter. This adds up since Durin's blood was able to corrupt Dvalin in the Mondstadt Archon quests. Jacob Ingold drank Elenas' blood to transform into Iniquitous Baptist. Elenas' body created the Melusine. Primordial Albedo used Durin's blood to create the Fellflower, and Durin's blood might be what revived Joel's missing father in Dragonspine. Many years after Durin's death, Primordial Albedo would escape Durin's body and stalk the real Albedo in an attempt to someday replace him. You can distinguish both Albedos by looking for the Primogem mark on the real Albedo's neck. The real Albedo was created after the Cataclysm. Reindotir made a breakthrough in her Primordial Human Project and successfully created the perfect Albedo, which she classified as Cretaceous, meaning chalk. Albedo is actually the name of one of the 4 major stages of the Magnum Opus, the alchemical process of creating the Philosopher's Stone. The stages are Nigredo, Albedo, Citrinidas, and Rubedo. We've established that Durin and Elenas both experienced some form of hypnosis during their destruction of Teyvat, but it's unclear if it was done under Reindotir's influence or if it was the call of the Abyss, meaning it was out of Reindotir's control. In fact, Albedo expresses some concern regarding a reality in which he might lose control.
If one day I lose control, destroy Mondstadt, destroy everything, can I rely on you to stop me?
This is scary considering her creations were powerful, near godlike beings. Consecrated beasts are wildlife that have grown larger and stronger due to feeding on the remains of gods or godlike beings. You can find them in places where you'd find Waynut, and you can find one eating the remains of Orobashi, Watatsumi Island's ex-god. You can find a couple around Elenas' body in Fontaine. At some undetermined point in time, Reindatir joined the Hexen Circle, a coven of powerful witches who conduct Irminsul exploration. Before pointing Albedo towards the care of fellow witch Inclei's mother Alice in Mondstadt, Reindatir and Albedo go on their final expedition. But one day, deep in the heart of a dungeon, master and apprentice discovered an artifact known as the Heart of Nibirius. Reindatir instructs Albedo to go to Mondstadt to look for Alice. She leaves him with the last extant manuscripts of the Opus Magnum, which is totally a reference to the Magnum Opus. This means at some point Reindatir had the goal of creating the Philosopher's Stone, an alchemical substance said to have the power of immortality, turn stones into gold, cure all diseases, all the good stuff. In real-life alchemy, the Philosopher's Stone was considered perfection at its finest, divine illumination and heavenly bliss. This might be the perfection that Skirk insinuates Reindatir is looking for. Just to throw it out there, since the words Opus Magnum are flipped in Genshin, does that mean the Philosopher's Stone does the opposite? It's just something to think about. But what was that artifact that Reindatir and Albedo found? What is the Heart of Nibirius? The Heart of Nibirius in Chinese is written the same way that a gnosis is written. Although we haven't seen this object yet or gotten any explanation for it, I think I found out what it is. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video. I'm your Leafy Lore Shira Minslif, and I read the Genshin Impact lore so that you don't have to.